If you live in Florida, you know that storms are going to happen. We have hurricanes, which, you can kind of prepare for those, are a little more predictable. Then you have those storms that just come out of nowhere. I mean, it could be a Sunday afternoon, blue skies, nice breeze, sun's out, and then 15 minutes later it can look like there's a hurricane. With that being said, for those of you that have a garden, it is very important to do a few things after these storms to keep your garden functional. So let's talk about that. The very first thing you want to do after any storm is make sure the scene is safe. You want to make sure there's no hanging debris, no trees overhead, no power lines. Now, my garden's pretty much out in the open, so I'm very lucky in that regard. We did have some damage in the back, a couple of trees, and I'll show you that here in a second. But besides my garden looking like a hot mess, I don't have to worry about hazards. This is a potential hazard that's going to need to get addressed as soon as possible. This tree was displaced about 1.5 feet into my fence line. I don't know if you can see that. My concern is what's going on below with the root system. At some point, this tree is going to come down, whether it's the next big storm or just time. This is not super close to my garden, but this is a big fat problem. So this is going to get removed ASAP. Another concern of mine is this big tree coming from my neighbor's yard. It's hanging over my fence, and unfortunately, it's hanging over my chicken coop. We do need to remove this tree as well, because if this decides to fall, not only is it going to damage my fence or potentially hurt somebody, it is going to mess up my chicken coop and possibly hurt one of my chickens. So this is not close to my garden, so I can still work in it safely, but this needs to get removed, and we're going to do that ASAP as well. Once we know with certainty our scene is safe, the next thing you want to do is you want to assess your garden for structural damage. What I mean by that is, the trellis, any poles or structures that were upright, your garden beds where you plant your plants. You want to make sure that everything is intact, and I certainly did that. And my trellis in the back, my cattle panel trellis, did very well in the Category 3 storm. Very important when you're assessing damage to check your plants. Now, as you can see, my okra look like a hot mess. I have some of my plants that are leaning, some leaning more than others. I have some that are uprooted. I have quite a few okra plants that have branches that have blown away, leaves that have blown away, and quite frankly, there's okra all over the place. Look at these. I mean, these look terrible. So there are things that you need to do and consider when you have damaged plants. If you have plants that are not severely damaged, you can go ahead and stake them, especially if you're early in the growing season. Now, if you have plants that are uprooted, like those over there, or plants that have received significant damage during the storm, you want to go ahead and remove those from your garden. Now, if there are plants with moderate damage, but are able to be pruned, you want to go ahead and prune off the branches and parts of the plant that were damaged, because remember, these storms with flying debris and so forth can weaken your plants, making them a little more susceptible to fungus and bacteria and viral infections and even pests. So you want to try to stay ahead of it if you can. When assessing damage, you want to make sure you check all your watering devices. I have a watering system, and it connects to this main black tube here. You want to go around and check everything individually. You want to turn on the water as well, make sure there are no leaks, because with wind and flying debris, it is very easy to damage your watering system. And if your watering system isn't working and you're not aware, that can result in money lost because you're losing water, and ultimately plant death, because if your plants aren't getting watered, they're going to eventually die. Another thing you want to do after a storm is make sure you clear all debris in the area. You don't want to leave anything behind that you could possibly trip on. And then you want to assess, which is kind of a silver lining, you want to assess any areas of standing water, because that could be a sign of poor drainage. And if you know that there's an area that has standing water, then you can potentially do something to redirect that water for future storms. So these are just some things to consider. You know, like I said, you want to stay on top of these things if you can, you know, because I mean, these storms come and go, but you want to try to do what you can. When you live in Florida and you have a garden, you just have to stay on top of these things. And listen, Florida's not the only place with storms, but it just seems like we get hit over and over again. With that being said, I almost feel like a pro when it comes to this stuff, but I have an awful lot of work to do. I mean, I have plants I need to remove, I have debris I have to pick up, I have some weeding, I have to start getting prepped for the next planting season. So this isn't too big of a loss, what Hurricane Milton did to my garden, but like I said, I got to get her done. So thank you so much for watching my channel. Thank you. If you haven't already subscribed, please do, and happy gardening. Bye-bye.